everybody, and a very warm welcome to our second series of Living Logos, and we're going to label this Suicide Part 2. So I just want to briefly introduce myself again. My name is Kim Kitson. I'm a clinical psychologist in private practice, and I would like the rest of the team to introduce themselves.
I'm Sue Samuel, and I'm a teacher.
I'm Basil Manches, and I'm a pastor at Metanoia Lifestyle Church.
The name is Brandon, and I'm a member at Calvary Christian Church. Amen.
For those of you attending and joining us for the second time, we hope that we really managed to touch a couple of you out there and share whatever was required for you to know. And we may have a little bit of repetition. And for the new people, we're going to jump right in and start looking at the contributing factors that we think adds to people committing suicide, thinking of suicide, or attempting suicide. So if you want to know more of the context, then please go back and look at session 1. So I'm wondering what you all would like to add into that contributing thinking of or attempting suicide. What are the factors?
Failure can be feeling a failure at home or in studying, and failure at anything that, you've set a goal and you've not achieved it, and feeling a failure that you've let someone down.
Loneliness is a big factor.
We've got stress. We've got relationship problems. And also the loss of loved ones. And seeing that I'm talking about that, we spoke about COVID-19, the impact that it has. And just in our church alone, we lost, we know of so many that has lost loved ones. And if you go and visit those people, that shocked me is like some of them, it's not 1, 2, it's a lot. And when you look at them where they stand, they are really challenged, and the impact that death has on us. And I think especially with where we find ourselves now with COVID-19, I think that is probably one major death of, losing loved ones. The role that actually plays during this time. Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah, can I just say also there's a cycle. Many people that commit suicide have somebody in the family that have committed suicide. Recently, the young man, in fact, my son's best friend committed suicide. And his mother committed suicide when he was a child. And the funny thing is he committed suicide in front of his own child. So that, the repetition and the cycle, that chain needs to be broken somewhere along the line, So there seems to be a history of it in certain families.
Indeed, I think learned behavior, if a parent has done that in front of a child, I think that definitely gives a child that as one option. I think also in the practice I've seen where women have been raped, they feel that is the only answer. They do not wish to continue living after ongoing sexual abuse, or in particular a rape case. Are there any others that you can think of?
Alcohol and drug abuse.
Yes.
We look at cyberbullying. It's people don't really understand that, but when negative things are spoken, especially for scholars, that it has an impact. They feel isolated, and the peer pressure, lots of peer pressure, defeat. Being defeated, losing something. It can be anything. I think with young people, relationships where, you think someone loves you and then they leave you, and you I think in school that is a huge thing. Body mutilation, those are things that can lead on, and to recognize, and just feeling insecure. And I think insecurity could be from parents being divorced, financial constraints in the house, lots of things that are happening that affects the child that they don't know who to actually talk to.
For adults, definitely financial constraints, definitely.
And I think we already mentioned mental disorders, and there's quite a lot of them.
Yes.
But also, some of them feel that they're a problem. Their existence is a problem. So I have a friend that also wanted to commit suicide many moons ago when he was a kid. And he felt like him being the problem in the house, that's why mom and dad used to fight so much. And that they had to fight because they had to support him, and he's a problem. And he actually wanted to take his own life. And until mom came to him and said, you know, boy, the reason I'm alive is because of you. You see, and he needed that answer. He needed a reason to live. And many a times they don't see or know the reasons. That somebody actually has to come up and give them that reason as to why they're actually there. Because we are all called for a reason.
One of the things now that's been in certain countries which they've allowed, which South Africa will probably be next in line, is assisted suicide. People with illnesses and they can't deal with an illness, and then they want to have assisted suicide. So to me that's going to be quite a predicament in the future. In Portugal they've just allowed it now. In a lot of the Scandinavian countries they allow it. And so I think South Africa will be next, because we're very liberal in our thinking in that sense.
I've very definitely seen that in the practice already, where people are not well and are asking a parent or a child to assist them, to put them out of their misery, which puts people in a real predicament, because it gets put across, if you love me, you'll help me out of my misery. It's a big thing.
Yeah, but also if you love me, you'll care for me.
Yeah, indeed.
As a body, we as believers, that's the important thing. I've seen the joy of people being able to care for families. I've heard of people with a difficulty and it's that. But there are always people in the body of Christ that can care and they can love and they can serve in such an unbelievable. Some people just can't. They can't even look after their own mother and father. But there are people they know that could readily do that. I know of a lady that she got divorced, and when her ex-father-in-law was so unwell, her husband had moved on. That side of the family had moved on. But for years and years and years, that woman just had the ability to look after her father-in-law. Her ex-father-in-law, she had nothing, and she had no contact with the other side of the family, but she looked after that man for years. She just had that empathy and that compassion, and it became a passion for her just to look after him. It was wonderful to see, So there's always somebody that I know the fact they say always, it's too hard to do that, but there's somebody that can do it. There's always somebody that can do it.
I think just being the blessing to somebody.
Yeah. And it's not easy, not easy to see somebody suffer. I mean, I go to the hospitals all the time. You go with families and it's hard. It's hard when somebody's suffering. It's terrible when you see them, big strong man or big strong woman, and you see them over the years just go backward and their health fails and they can't speak and they have Alzheimer's and whatever. It's hard. But as believers, God will enable us to be able to cope. I firmly believe that. It's not our right to take life. God has given life, and it's not our right to take life. I know a lot of people say, my body belongs to me, so let me do what I want, with abortion and with that. It's my body, I can do with it what I want. But at the end of the day, we are accountable, for the way how we look after our body and what we do with it.
I think not to forget that today's generation live in a sort of fantasy world. So much is unreal, with video games and movies that are out, and all the heroes that are out there that you want to be that. And if you can't be that, then who are you? And I think children are misled by those, because there are instances of young children actually taking their lives because they've watched something, and we must be aware that those things have an influence, because young people are very easily influenced. So we need to in our country especially, if we have the opportunity to shape young minds to know that there is help, there is, there are advocates for them, whether it be a teacher or in the church or wherever, that there's someone who's on their side. I think that we need to be absolutely certain that we present that to children. And to just look at, when we look at all of this, policemen, the jobs that people do, high pressured, PTSD, every day doing that same thing, seeing the horrible things, have an effect on the minds of those doing those jobs. Yeah. So to become aware, if family members are working in those jobs, to see the impact and how can one help the family who has, to deal with that.
So once again, I think it's so important to just be mindful of where people are coming from. Their physical and biological backgrounds, their social circumstances, their financial circumstances, the work that they do. And also I think our responsibility, as we said in the first session, to be available and to help people remove the stigma and that whole taboo that it can't be spoken about. They can reach out, and they do need to reach out.
Can I just add something there? We were talking a lot about social media in the first session. I just want to point out that social media is also a factor when it comes to suicide.
Yes.
Especially our youth, they live on social media. They don't have a life.
Yes.
Life without social media is no life. You take away their phones, tablets, PCs.
Cannot function.
That's the first thing they think. I have nothing to live for, and they want to take their lives. And we've seen it even in the schools. If there's no phone in that child, he doesn't function at all, he or she.
And I think they very much want to do what their friends are doing. Again, I see it so often in the practice, the kind of games that they're playing. Killing
Violence.
is easy and simple. And you actually score good marks when you kill others or yourself online. So that definitely has an impact and leads psychologically to today, if they have a bad day or have a bad exam. So I'm wondering what we as people think the warning signs, what do they look like? So I'd like to sort of just split that into sort of everyday warning signs, and then the more serious ones that really, not that any should be overlooked, but what are your thoughts on that? What do we look out for?
I actually said to somebody once that when people, don't you pick up, what are the signs? This is early on in my ministry, and then somebody once said to me that people that are suicidal don't talk about it, So I'm not sure about that. Maybe as a psychologist you can help us it. But recognizing the signs of suicide, when they talk about suicide, when they make statements of hopelessness, helplessness, worthlessness, preoccupation with death, sudden happiness and calm, loss of interest in material things, disposal of material things, visiting loved ones, and setting one's affairs in order. And it's funny that two of the suicides that most recently that I was involved in, the people, they planned it perfectly. The last will and testament, went to the police station, they had everything organized, they planned it very, very particularly. Yeah. And they were unplanned people, they were not organized people, they planned it so well.
Basil, to answer your question, I think you never really know, because a big chunk of them do not talk about it, but you will see it in their behavior. Withdrawal, moodiness. Something will change, something will be visibly different, even although they may not reaching out. And to answer your other question, you get those that really plan right down to the last millimeter. Yeah. And you could have somebody that has just been retrenched, or as we were speaking, has just got a mark back from school and they failed and they don't know how to face their wives or their parents if it's a school failure. And they unplanned, so to speak, just go home and end it. Okay. So I think you get it right across the board. Other warning signs?
So, the mind is probably the most dangerous thing that we have. And everything starts in the mind. And suppose that's why they start planning. So, and what we was talking about withdrawing and isolation, and yet here we're in a pandemic where we are isolated, and that is almost like an encouragement to those that already has that spark. You know, we basically combustion, and we just fuel those thoughts of suicide, and the drugs anti-sue. Spoke about drugs and alcohol, where people start, you can see there's a change in their lives. I mean, this never used to be an alcoholic or a drug addict or stuff like that, and all of a sudden, because this is one of the reasons people say they use alcohol or drugs, is to numb that pain, to clear that conscience and suppress it and all of that, and they go into that, and they will sustain that for as long as they can. But what happens if they come out of that, or people, there's nothing like lockdown, for argument's sake, there was no sale of alcohol. So they couldn't do that any longer. So what happens now? Now they are open to that again, and they can't suppress it anymore. The next best thing, take my own life. You know, and that's exactly what has happened. And I mean, during this lockdown, there were a lot of suicides. And people, I mean, families, because they can't live like that anymore, and here we're isolated, and isolation is part of it, and here we isolate them, and they basically doomed a few people actually by doing this.
Agreed. Want to say?
I think that the first thing to notice is a change in behavior. You know, whether they were happy and now they're sad. A child that's locking themselves in the room, has no contact with the rest of the family. Anger.
Yeah.
Actually displaying anger, and it's for no reason. And eating disorders. You see that amongst women mainly, bulimia and anorexia. So to recognize if the child was doing certain things and they don't do it. Also the friends who they have has either changed or are no more. Those are signs to be actually seen. And behavior towards parents, perhaps one can recognize that, because oftentimes the signs are there if something has happened and they cannot express it, or they feel guilt or shame or hurt or pain, that when it's not expressed, that it's going to come out in something else, and in you know, the darkness or negative change in clothes that they start to wear.
Yeah.
That's a thing to notice, that you go on the dark side. Everything is black, or everything is, you know, real, totally, or secrecy. There's secrecy, locking of the doors, playing of music that is really the words are negative. The words, everything that is coming out is really not good. I remember years ago, little children singing the song "Suicidal," and that they had no idea the meaning of suicide even, and singing that song. And so that can be influenced, that songs that children listen to, because there are, you know, rapping songs that you can shoot this one and do this one and you're okay, and, you know, the words that can set a person in motion to think, oh, they're talking about me, I can do that, you know. So those are the things to notice. And I think for us, we can notice within the body of Christ. You can see someone's behavior. You can notice it in your workplace, in the home, even friends that you have. If you see, you know, their children, and suddenly their children no longer want to greet, or, you know, you can see. Those are little things that you can just pick up and then work on how best to deal with it.
I think also people sleeping a lot suddenly for no apparent reason, or not paying attention to their personal hygiene any longer. And also people start giving things away. And gifting their prized possessions to people.
I just, somebody once said, you can answer this, that you never know who the people are that, you know, they don't, they're very guarded, so they don't know it. But I've just, over the years, there are pointed questions. There are certain things that you can ask if you suspect, if somebody comes to you. Because I've had people come to me and said, oh, they think so-and-so wants to commit suicide, you know. And there are certain questions that you can ask them and that. But the thing is, we don't, you don't really know who the people are. And as you said, the hygiene and giving things away and suddenly visiting loved ones that they've never visited before, you don't actually sit and think, okay, now why is he doing that? I'm a conspiracy theorist, so when people do things, I'm always thinking, why? So I would perhaps pick something like that up, but generally we don't pick that up, Why are they not bathing? Why are they not changing their clothing? Why are they giving their best shoes away? And I think we need to have a different mindset and think about things like that and look at our children and kids and adults a little bit differently, to be able to pick up the signs.
You see, I also think it's based on character. You see, where some will isolate, others, there's a saying, I only know it in Afrikaans, waar die hart van vol is, loop die mond van oor. And how people would start...
Out of the mouth comes overfull of the heart.
Exactly, and it will give you an idea, because all of a sudden the way they speak is all directed in a way of suicidal and stuff like that. Also, especially with the youth today. We're living in an age where the youth, they don't like to be shamed. Guilt and shamefulness tend to drive them crazy. And they would rather take their own life than to walk around being ashamed. So that just thought there's also factors.
I agree, and I want to add to that. In my world, I think that it's very much about patterns of behavior. So someone may not sort of present themselves well today, and there might be a reason for it. There could have been load shedding. But if someone is consistently presenting, for example, with poor hygiene, or consistently over a period of time sleeping more than usual and not really wanting to get up and go to school or work, then the alarm bells start to show. So I think this also links with something you said, Basil. How do we know if a person is serious or not? Like, who do we actually take seriously?
Yeah. Well, if I detect somebody is suicidal, then I'll persuade them. I'll take them for help, because I'm not, I can encourage people and I can lead them to the Word. If they know the Word, it's so much easier. But a lot of the people that I have to do with are not in the church, are not in that, to persuade them that the gospel is the answer to their total frustration and hopelessness, is at times difficult. We've got to leave that to the Lord, So then it's best to take them to the professional. Take it to somebody. When I mean professional, there are pastors or people in your church that are competent. I mean, I'd easily take somebody to Sue. No, her compassionate wisdom will identify women and young children. So where do I take this particular person to see who? Just to get that help, that spark, that little bit of hope. Then I myself will follow up on them. I'll show interest, you know what I mean? I'll give them things, I'll buy them things, I'll send them little clips of words and things, or songs, just to encourage, that's my bit. I'm a good encourager. So I'll be able to do that, making sure that they get the numbers for Lifeline or for whatever, suicide prevention or anything like that, I'll be able to refer them to available resources, and I'll just stay involved in their life, I'll ask, is there something can I go to the shop for you? You know what I mean? Can I do this for you? That kind of thing. Just to show them that you care in it, And if you have just 2 or 3 people doing that for one person, then suddenly they become overwhelmed with care and love, And it makes them think, it makes them feel valued. And I think that at the end of the day, that's what the church can do so well. We do that well. Even if the church is not functioning the way it should, the church does that well. Whereas the world doesn't do it well. The church does it well. Generally, we do things like that very, very well. We do care, It doesn't matter how small your church is. There's always people that are gifted to be able to show care, to love, to encourage, and to listen. So that's why I'm encouraging. That's why I'm in the church, you know what I mean? And the fellowship is important. The body is great. It's unbelievable what the body can do and what the body does do, And I think take the church out of society will be a total mess. Evil will reign, and the church is so important, And that's why it's imperative that the church is out there, And every opportunity we get, if we hear of people that are struggling, we need to get involved, and try and see how we can make a difference.
Yeah, and I think that even if someone doesn't necessarily need to be showing the behavior, they could just start inquiring about suicide. And I think that we need to take everyone seriously. and not overlook anyone, because you never know what their prompting or questions may be about at the end of the day.
So for me and Kim, I think I go back to what I just said. It's based on character. If I come in and say I'm going to commit suicide, people's gonna laugh at me because there's a tendency that people won't believe me. You know, people don't
Your character,
because of who I am,
Yes.
because I like to joke around. But if it's somebody that doesn't joke around and they say that, I think like the story of the boy who cried wolf, they never said it before. So in that case, you will rather take it seriously from the word go. Then find out that they were just joking, then not do it and find out that they actually did go ahead with it. So in every case, I would say that it doesn't matter whether the person is actually a joker or not. We should always take it
Yes.
serious.
I agree.
Rather be safe than sorry,
Yes.
in my case.
I agree with you, because let's use you as the example.
There we go.
You know, as the joker. You may, or somebody like you, may need to get a message across in a joke because they don't know how else to actually verbalize it, and
is
it
true.
could really be a serious message that's brought across in a very joking manner. So, yeah, it's a serious topic no matter how we look at it.
Yeah.
Can I just say that Christianity acknowledges the emptiness and the brokenness of the world, you know, and Christianity offers something more, you know. We do offer something more. And I know people point fingers at the church, there's failure here, there's failure there, you know, and there's a pastor that does this and a pastor that does that. But it is a drop in the ocean compared to the multitude of things that the church is doing, you know. And people are quick to say, oh, but look what the church has done and look what this person has done. But what the church is really doing, I believe the church is the answer to life, to the world, you know, to communities, you know. And I think we need to really be more involved in our community so that this kind of thing can be prevented, or so that we can help and come alongside people that have had the loss and the suffering, you know, and help them, you know, just a food parcel, somebody that's struggling so that they don't do a stupid thing, you know, and clothing or whatever we can do. And once they've been through a difficult situation like a death or a suicide, that the church is there to bring help and to assist and to guide that family. And for me, that's imperative, that's very important. I try and keep contact with the families, even after normal death, you know, I try and keep contact with the families. I've got a list of things that I can send to people every morning, you know, just to remind them, we're thinking about them, and we're open for discussion, and if we can help you in any way, you know, it's taking a food parcel, taking somebody to the shop, there's so much that we can do. The church, we have the people that can do it. You know, no organization's got more people than the church. We are, you know, no organization's got more cars than us, or more money than us. The church is really equipped to be able to come to the community and help them through that difficult time. You know.
And I think it's just, again, you know, the church is such a powerful family. So even for those people that don't have biological family, they still have a family in the church.
Exactly.
On that note, I know we chatted about it in the first session, but let's add on to that. How else can we help people that are either wanting to commit suicide or families that are left behind after someone has committed suicide?
We spoke a lot about the church, and that is why we are also, you know, because the church represents Christ, or all churches should represent Christ. But there are people out there that would not go to a church for help, you know. And some of our stories here that we were sharing was, a lot of it was based on family, because family hurts you the most. You tend to get hurt the most there. So who do you go to? You know, there's a saying that says a friend sticks closer than a brother, and I personally have experienced that through my life. You know, I've got friends that I would go to them before I go to anyone else, and they've always been there for me. You know, and that is out there as well. You know, there are people that I know that there is no way, because not everybody sees the church in a good light, unfortunately. And there are churches, however, out there that does that. You know, I've seen quite a few of them as well, and it's not a good thing. It's an extremely bad thing, because Christ should always be the light of every church. Well, Christ is the light of the world anyway. So yeah, it is hard for people. I mean, if you hear what people say out there about the church, you know, it's easy to hear what we say, but there's people out there that speaks bad about the church. And if they in need, they feel, okay, now I can't go to the church, I can't even speak to the pastor because I don't trust them. They don't have the answer, which is Jesus Christ. Who do they go to? Who do they speak to? You know, and like I said, they don't even go to their friends. I mean, their family, and the helpline that was there. You know, a lot of people actually use those helplines because they feel it's someone I don't know, somebody that's anonymous. They don't know who I am, what I am, and how I live my life, and they just feel more secure in that way to share them, because especially when they start speaking, and there's an enlightenment there. There's like a burden shared, and then they can get off their shoulders there, you know. But it's like Pastor Basil just said. Now, you know, the church really, we live not for ourselves. We live for each other. We live for the next person, you know, and we are there to give answers, not just for ourselves, but to the next person as well, in our neighbors.
I will take this on a practical level. Years ago, a friend of mine who lives in Orange Farm got up in the middle of the night to her shack being burnt, razed to the ground. Her grandchild died in that fire, and her daughter had severe burns. Her daughter consequently died from the burns, and one of the children was saved. She's actually in high school now, but she's the grandmother. Grandmother is my friend, and she got up in the middle of the night, ran. It's in Orange Farm, the main road there, headed towards Vereniging that way. She ran and stood in the middle of the road and said, "Right now, Lord, I'm ready to die." And I want to say no cars came because God had a plan.
Amen.
She's a community leader in her community. We actually do some outreaches in her house. She has a house now. God has restored her. And the only thing we could do on the day this happened is to go. I had to call, some people out to take me out to her. And we collected things, and we were practically there, standing in the ashes. And we started with prayer. Thank God that He didn't answer her request to die.
Yeah.
And she, from that day onward, has lived her life to actually do something good for somebody else. It changed who she is. And it was... the entire community came together, and the excess she received from an outreach we did there, she was able to bless her community. So it can take a negative thing, and it can be turned around by the love of Christ, that she can so know it, and she can demonstrate that love. And so that for me is always an encouraging story. I have contact with her all the time up till today.
Amen.
Her children, I know them, we've watched them grow up. And she was actually the domestic worker of my neighbor. But she became a friend of mine because I would spend time teaching her the word.
Amen.
We look at other friends of ours. We were on holiday in Durban, and we got a call 2 days before Christmas that our pastor friend's daughter has just committed suicide. Chris and I didn't even consider anything. We simply left our children with family. We got into our car and drove all the way back. And that is something meaningful for a family.
Yeah.
In their crisis, who is going to be there at Christmas time when everyone's with their own family? We still have contact. The dad has died, but the mum, I sent a message to Ashley that she'd sent me. She said, Sue, someone asked me, how am I coping after my daughter died? And it will be 20 years this year.
Sure.
She said, I can just tell them of the love of Christ and the peace I have. And that's what God's word tells us. In the world you will find trouble, but in Him we have peace. And that's what we need to take to someone in this crisis. It's a tragedy, and our very presence can actually let them know we care. What is the need for them there and then? Can we simply, sometimes it's simply holding their hand and letting them cry. Sometimes it's just hugging them. Sometimes it's visiting and knowing that it's meaningful for them. Sometimes it's simply being who you are, because, being real and knowing what that person feels. They have to face family and friends and community, and everybody has the same question. Why? In my own life, I've asked God why in certain things that have occurred in my life. And the answer God gave me was why not?
Why not?
It was because of the why not that I'm able to recognize someone who's in trouble. You see, because my own troubles have caused me to be sensitive to a person who is, and then I thank God, thank you, that through the trials and the difficulties, you've taught me how I can reach out. Like my friend in Orange Farm, who her life has turned around. And God has blessed her in ways that one cannot imagine. And the one thing that we can all, just share with people is the love of Christ.
Amen.
The fact that He loved us first. The fact that He wants to be a part of our lives. And I just want to read this, that nothing in all creation is hidden from God's sight.
Amen.
Nothing. Everything is uncovered and laid bare before the eyes of Him to whom we must give an account. As much as other people will give an account, we will give an account for what we've done. Therefore, since we have a great high priest who has gone through the heavens, Jesus the Son of God, let us hold firmly to the faith we profess.
Amen.
For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet was without sin. Let us then approach the throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. And that's what it is, that we find grace and mercy. And love is unconditional. This, it's not a bartering. It's simply to give it. He gave it to us, and we can give it. And I want to just say that just reach out, at any time. It doesn't, and this is it's not the only suicide family that we know. We've been to another family, and one of the things was we had gone to the funeral of a son who died accidentally, and the other son at that funeral, and it worried me, and I voiced it. He said, I can no longer live because my brother is dead. He, I don't know how long later, committed suicide. So we must always be very aware of the things people say, even on a public platform, because it's a cry for help. Cry for help. We must recognize that. And even if it might be that we're making a mistake, I rather err on that side than ignore it. Because we need to, by faith, demonstrate the fruit of the Spirit. That's what we need to demonstrate. On our own, really on my own, I can't do it. But Lord, please help me that I may be a help to someone else.
Believers, we're called to have joy and hope, and we've got to carry that over to help people, because, as Christians, we recognize emptiness and brokenness and all that the world offers. But we as Christians and as a church, we offer hope and newness and abundant life, and Jesus shared His pain and His suffering for each and every one of us so that we can have redemption and restoration. And that's what it's about. People need to know that because of what Christ has done, you and I can live, and we can live in its fullness and its balance, and not just like us at off, But there are other people that are quieter than us, that don't joke like us, that aren't as loud as us, but they have the joy of the Lord, you know,
Yeah.
and we need to share that with
Yes,
others, you know,
amen.
and that's important. That's important. If people see something that they can hang on to or know or experience,
Yes.
you know, that'll give them hope.
It's a big responsibility, not only to the Lord, but I think to the others out there, because we have the knowledge and we have the fruits of the Spirit, and people look to us to be that example. And even if someone is in despair and they say, but I want what you've got, and they may ask that question, that could help them to change their mind between actually committing suicide or finding out what it is that you've got
Yes.
that they would like. Auntie Sue, what you said, I find amazing in how God intervened with that lady in Orange Farm.
Yes.
And I often wonder how many times He intervenes when we don't even know
Yeah.
that He's doing it. That
Yeah.
was just beautiful. I'd like us to maybe just share a couple more examples, very briefly, on your exposure to suicide and how you've handled it.
So, I'm at the end of my grade 3. Standard 1 is grade 3 now. Cycle, and there's some splint in my foot that nobody knows what it is, how to take it out, and I end up in hospital. They cut it out, so forth and so forth. Now, my father died when I was 9 years old. However, during those 9 years, I cannot tell you how many times he actually shared time with me. He's always been, either he's at work or he's with the friends, he drank a lot, he smoked, you know, all those type of things. So it's really a handful of times where we actually spent time together. Yet for me, my father was the world. I loved him. There was no one, it's like he was the only person that I really loved him. There was a space in that heart dedicated for him, you know. And he took me to hospital, he brought me back home. At that time, my mom was already passed on. So I lived with my stepmom at that time. And I remember this day when he brought me home and he said to my stepmom, we're not sleeping on the bed. He's sleeping on the bed. We're sleeping on the floor. And he made a bed for them, and I was laying on that big bed all by myself. And I remember with my head down the bed looking at them, and it was pitch dark. And I said, Lord, if this man dies, I'm going to take my life. There it comes. Okay.
Grace is sufficient. Thank you, Jesus.
And for me, there was no reason to live if he dies. And now that I'm grown, I keep looking back as to why would I say that if he was never really with us, you know, and all that. But I remember we were at the end of my grade 4, I think it was. It was festive at the end of that year, and I was sitting in the lounge and all the kids were there. It was a very loud place. And my stepsister, or should I say my half-sister actually, because it's my father's, came in. Her boyfriend walked in and he says, my father is dead. And I remember sitting on the couch and I'm thinking, all right, you made a promise to yourself. You need to kill yourself. And it's almost like I zoomed out at that moment, because I can't remember everything that went on in the house. It was just me, myself, sitting there and thinking, and for some reason I couldn't kill myself. So Brian he's my baby brother. He was 1 year old, and Norman is 2 years younger than me. So Norman was, I think 9, Norman was 7. And I looked at them and I said, no, I have a reason to live.
Amen.
And that was a thought that came to me, and I said, you know, I'm going to be there for my brothers. And the thing is, we went obviously from house to house, family to family, school to school. But the one thing that God always had his hand on was he never split us up. until the bitter end. And it's funny when I look back and think of those things, but I think many of us that there's problems, we tend to forget to look behind us to see whose footprints has been carrying us all those time.
Yep.
And
His grace.
If I can just say, I've been involved. People find you immediately as a pastor, and to come to and like Sue and Chris, I get in my car and you go immediately. You do whatever needs to be done. I've been on the golf course already on the 7th hole, and just having to say to people, sorry, I need to go, and off you go. And the care and the love that you share with the people, it's imperative. It's so important, just to be there for the family and just to encourage whatever. You might not be able to say the right thing, just be there for them, and that's important,
Chris's cousin was living in Johannesburg years ago when Michael was little, and his cousin had a son the same age as Michael, who will be 30. Michael will be 30 next year. And we would take Michael to play with this little boy every Sunday, so that he knew his cousin. And years later, they got divorced, and he went back to Durban, and his ex-wife had the children, the boy, and then she met someone and she had another child. But this boy, after the divorce, was never the same. And what happened was, he actually can't remember how long ago, because it was after Chris's dad died in that same year. In 60 days, 4 people died. 3 naturally, and this young boy, we came back straight from a funeral to go to his funeral because he had hung himself. And his mum didn't want anything to do with the family because she had divorced. And perhaps it was that she would be blamed. But it was over. She had a boyfriend, and this young man wanted something. He was in high school, and his mum wouldn't give it to him. And he told her something. I don't know what he told her. We didn't go into that because she didn't, some people close the door on that, and you need to take that. Unfortunately, that's the reality. But one doesn't really think about that. It was tragic at the time, and my children, Michael was little, and I didn't think about the impact it would have on him. And he happened to have mentioned it in the week. Do I remember that boy had committed suicide? I wasn't having a conversation with him. So obviously, this kind of topic brings into remembrance hurt and pain that people, have seen.
Yeah.
And for us to recognize that suicide affects, and I don't know what the stats are at the moment, but a couple of years ago, it was that 50 people's lives are changed permanently after one suicide.
Yeah.
And for us to recognize that it has an effect, whether negative or positive, it has an effect. How they think and their reaction. Some people, what does God think? God is a loving God. I always think of the prodigal son. He went out, he did all his things, and God always had his arms wide open, always has, to receive back. I've made a mistake. I know I've gone the wrong path. Yeah. We can help those people to have our arms open and say, you know what, it's tough out in the world. And I say to parents who go through difficulties with young children, make sure your door is always open and that child knows you are always there. No matter what they've done or how difficult it is, that door is open. They can always come home. Doesn't matter what the world or whoever does, the door is open that you would receive them. And that's what we can help. With parents who've gone through this, help them to see how they can help other children not to repeat that, because they've lived through it. That can be their making a change in society and using something that was negative to make positive. It's what the work of the cross is. Jesus took something that was negative, and that's the plus in our lives, that he is part of our lives, and for us to look at that. And I just want to, it's an encouragement to anyone who's going through these difficulties. You're not alone. You're not alone. There's always someone at the end of a phone call. There's always someone, even outside of your home, to just speak to. You see, if you talk, you can then get a response. There are two things we need to know. God is sovereign. Life and death is in his hand.
Yeah.
And every one of us has a choice. We have a choice, and with our choice comes the responsibility. And whatever decision one makes, there's the responsibility, but besides the responsibility, with the choice there are consequences. And for us to understand that, the impact it has, not only personally, but on other people's lives.
Such very, very wise words, Auntie Sue. Thank you. I think a lot of food for thought, and I think people will ponder on that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Amen.
Brandon, I just want to jump back to you briefly. I just wanted to say thank you for being real and being vulnerable, especially in this forum. And I think that there may very well be some people out there that you have spoken right into their hearts. And just being an incredible blessing. And I just like, if you're okay, to maybe just closing comments from your side, from somebody who's been there, and who thankfully did not make that decision. Just what would you say to somebody out there that's maybe sitting in your shoes right now?
Auntie Kim, life is worth living. It's a gift from God, and God is always there to forgive you, and he's actually standing there, like Auntie Sue said. Reminds me a lot of the prodigal son, and he says, come home. God is there, and he wants his children to come home, and he will help them. Amen.
Powerful. Thank you. Basil, anything from your side as we close off?
No.
You're happy to leave it on
Yeah,
that note?
it's a good way to end.
Indeed. Very powerful and very true. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you.
I think just again to say to everybody that there is help out there. Once again, I know Ashley will put the numbers on the screen, but you can reach out to a place called Griefshare. It's Christian based. South African Depression and Anxiety Group. The toll-free number is 011 234 4837. There's a suicide crisis line, 0800 567 567, or you can just merely send an SMS to 31393. And then there's also Lifeline. Or reach out to somebody in your community or in your church or to one of us if you are that person that needs help.
Amen.
Thank you for being an amazing team, and thank you to everybody for joining us.
And don't forget Jesus on the main line.
Amen.